Hi everyone, thanks for joining our webinar. Our topic today focuses on digital impressioning and chairside milling. My name is Adam, Content Marketing Specialist with Schein, and I'll be your moderator. There will be no live Q&A following today's presentation. If you have additional questions about CAD/CAM that cannot be answered by today's presentation, please send us a question via the chat tool and we will get an answer to you as soon as possible. This webinar is sponsored by Schein Dental and Planmeca, and no CE credits are being offered for viewing this presentation. Our speaker today is Dr. Renne.
Hey everybody, Renne here from the Medical University of South Carolina College of Dental Medicine, where I am the Assistant Dean of Innovation and Digital Dentistry. Today we're going to go over digital impressions and chairside milling with the intent to share some new information about the scanners and technology from Planmeca. Now, many of you guys know that Planmeca has definitely one of the best CBCT systems on the planet. In fact, they're number one, and they're number one for a reason. They pioneered and perfected ultra-low dose imaging. Ultra-low dose imaging essentially takes standard 3D imaging and decreases the radiation by about 77% without decreasing quality at all. And this has been proven in independent studies. A lot of other manufacturers claim to have ultra-low dose protocols, but the quality of the radiographs make it almost unusable. And so Planmeca is leading the way with their ProMax series and their Viso series. But what many of you don't know is that they also have a phenomenal scanner and mill. And so the purpose of today is just to kind of go over that technology and what you could do with it. One of the perks about being at the university is I have access to over $3.4 million worth of scanners and mills. And so as a result, I'm able to directly compare and contrast the different systems and can speak firsthand onto the quality of the restorations that I get from the different systems. And so it's just really cool to be able to have all this fantastic technology and, more importantly, use it in my practice, because my private practice is where I make most of my income and how I'm able to support my family. So it's really important for me to be efficient in practice, not just dilly-dally and things like that. So we are going to discuss the Planmeca Emerald S first. It looks almost identical to the original Emerald, but it's not. It's completely new on the inside. It's about 3 times as fast. It has a 20% larger full color sensor, and they did all that without increasing tip size or increasing weight. Okay, so it's really cool. But if you were to ask me, well, how does it perform compared against all the other top systems on the market? And I would say, well, to be honest, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. There's so many good scanners on the market today. The Emerald S, if I were to take off the labels here and just, show you these all side by side, it'd be kind of hard to tell which one's which. They're all really good. They're all super fast. They all have full color scanning. So I'm going to try to go through some eccentricities of the Emerald S and why I think, it becomes one of the best scanners on the market, because if you consider all these little things that are not too well known. The first thing is that the scanner is powered by software called Romexis. Romexis is this amazing software. It's the neural network behind this system, and it's a completely open software. And we'll go through Romexis a lot today. But let me show you some real-time scan speeding here. This is not sped up. This is super fast scanner. It's literally 3 times as fast as the previous generation scanner. And like I said, the amount of data that's captured is 20% more per scan. So it's got a larger full-frame sensor without increasing tip size. Artificial intelligence soft tissue removal that you just saw there. So it's deleting extraneous data. It's got full color imaging with freely exportable color files, so you could get those color files out instantly. The model render times are like seconds, not minutes. Some of these systems you have to even upload them to the cloud to get the model. Now, it is amazing in its ability to be hands-free. The scanner itself acts like a mouse, so you could rotate the scanner, which rotates the model, without having to touch anything and contaminate anything. It does high-definition snapshot photographs just by hovering over the tooth. So instantly you take a photo. Now that photo goes into the electronic health record, but it also goes onto the 3D model, and you could alter the color and contrast of that as well. So here's a patient that basically is having some cracked tooth syndrome on the upper quadrant here, and we cannot narrow down a tooth. We tried tooth sleuth, percussion, palpation, radiographs. It could be any one of these guys. And so I'm showing her on the screen, in 3D, her alloy restorations, and then I'm showing her the 2D high definition photographs as well. And she's looking at these cracks and everything like that. And we're basically, every new patient that comes in is getting this kind of treatment. They're getting 3D scanned, okay, which takes like 30, 40 seconds an arch, and they're getting these high quality photographs taken at the same time that you're scanning. So there's no need to do anything separate for patient education. Now, of course, the color is really cool for marking margins too. In this case, I have no retraction. And so I'm using the color to look at the difference between pink and white and determine where my finish line goes on that restoration. Okay, now what's cool is you could actually trim the die here and hit that little retraction button. And what the laboratory will get is this. They'll get a model that is ditched. So for cases where you have pretty subgingival finish lines and you know where you put them, but the lab might not, you could mark them and then retract the 3D model. Of course, the Emerald S is really good at soft tissue tracking with the larger frame sensor, and it's flying across palates and edentulous arches. The bite articulation has been dramatically improved. It's one of the best new features that goes unrecognized with this software. They're constantly innovating and updating and perfecting this. You just don't really know because it looks very similar to the way the software did 4 years ago. But the reason why they keep it looking the same is so that people don't have to relearn every time they start the computer. It's the same format, but what they've done is they completely recoded everything, and it's all better. Of course, you could have shade matching without calibration, by the way. You don't have to do anything. You just scan, and you're able to get a shade from that. Now, this is one of the most exciting things pending FDA is the near infrared transillumination to detect interproximal caries without having to use radiation. So all this is a tip. It's a relatively inexpensive tip that you'll be able to snap on. I just think there's really cool things from this company and from this scanner. It's definitely one of my favorite scanners on the market. Out of all the ones that I've had the pleasure to use, I find myself most often picking this thing up and just going for it because it's really, really lightweight. The software is incredibly intuitive, and I think that's one of the most important things that keeps me from going back for this scanner and be the first one that I grab. One thing that you also have to understand, and I think this is under-recognized, people just don't really understand this, but it's really important, especially when you want to start to grow your practice and expand. The scanner is completely plug and play. What that means is that the software is networkable. Romexis is designed from the ground up for large enterprise-wide solutions. So, for example, at the university here, we have over 55 licenses of Romexis. Okay, that's basically the scan engine of this scanner. And of course, it does much more. We'll go into that later. But what's cool is I could be scanning on the first floor, and then instantly that data is available on the sixth floor, say. Or likewise in your practice, if you are scanning an operatory 1, that information is instantly available in all your ops that have the software. Or if you have a group practice, scanning in Office 1, instantly could see that stuff in Office 2 and start working on that. Say you have one centralized milling system. More importantly is it's just a USB cord. So you could literally have every operatory have a minimum spec computer that, these computers, you could buy your own. They let you spec out your own computer and load the software on there. And so what that means is you could just go from op to op to op, just unplug the USB and plug it in the next room and you're ready to go. So a lot of people are using desktops, the same computers that are in each op running the electronic health record and things like that. All you need is a pretty moderately powered graphics card. It's just really cool. It's completely open, plug and play, networkable. It's also probably the most open scanner on the market. And what I mean by that open, easy to get files in and out. So getting them out is initially important for you when you want to send to the laboratory and things like that, or shoot them to a mill, any mill. In that regard, you could get the STL files out, okay, of the scan, but you could also get the STL file out of your crown design. And we'll talk about why that's important in a minute and why a lot of other systems don't let you do that. You could also get the full color file out. And really cool is you could import files. So let's say the laboratory does, something like they do a screw retain crown on a custom abutment, and they are sending you the abutment in the mail. They could send you that crown design file, and you could mill it on your mill because you're able to import STL files. You can import face scans, unlimited amounts of CBCTs. It's just really insane how powerful this is. And of course, the various different tips. We have the near-infrared transillumination tip, we have the standard tip, and then something called the slimline tip, which is this magical tiny tip. Don't let people tell you that tip size doesn't matter. It does matter. It's really hard to get some of these ginormous scanners back behind second molars, if not impossible. Patients have to disarticulate their jaw like a cobra and get back there or something like that. It's crazy. And so Planmeca developed the smallest autoclavable tip on the market. And this tip is kind of quite magical. It's a tiny little tip. Okay, it's literally the size of your finger. And this tip also has the same feature as the standard tip. That means it heats up. Okay, it does have some smart features where it tracks how long you've used the tip in minutes. It tracks all that kind of stuff, so you know when it's starting to go bad. You could right click on the computer on the tip and it'll tell you how many minutes it's been used. And of course, it's like I said, it heats up almost instantaneously to avoid fogging because it has a heater element at the tip. This tip is about half the size of the Trios tip. It is a phenomenal tip. It's lighter than your iPhone when you combine this package. And you might not think weight is important, but it is when you scan all day. You're not going to get a scanner and not use it, right? We scan every new patient. And so if you're scanning, let's say you're scanning 10 complete arches a day. If you have something that weighs as much as a bowling ball, it starts to give you accelerated carpal tunnel and stuff like that. And like I said, this thing it's ultra small. Okay, you could fit it anywhere. People that have TMD, who have trouble opening, not a problem. And of course, there's no fees. Planmeca does not nickel and dime. Some of these scanners, man, they add up over $4,000 a year in just fees to be able to turn the thing on. And if you don't pay your fees, you can't turn it on. You can't use it. You basically have a brick sitting there. So what's cool about Planmeca is there's no fees. And of course, these companies came up with fees and they're like, well, they're not buying impression material anymore, so we'll go ahead and charge them a scan fee. That is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard of. You're basically destroying any kind of minuscule ROI you had on the scanner by having to pay fees. And so Planmeca realizes that, and they're one of the few companies left that will not charge a fee. What's cool also about the Emerald software, you're able to design your own restorations, right? And they don't care where you send it. You could send it to a Planmeca mill, which we'll talk about their mills in a minute. They're phenomenal. But you could also send it to any other mill because it's completely open STL. You could also send it to a milling center. So the design process is really actually quite fun. And here it is. You have these powerful tools to be able to manipulate the restoration, put the occlusion where you want it, put the proximal contact strength how you like it. And what's really nice is that this is completely something that could be team member driven. And this file could be sent to a laboratory, to a milling center. There's a lot of good milling centers, zirconiamilling.com, there's Alien Milling, US-based milling centers. And what they do is they take your crown design, okay, and they mill it, and they send it back to you for like $30. That's right, $30. You can't mill in office for less expensive. You can get a full contour zirconia restoration back for $30 if you design it. That's amazing, guys. It takes like 3 minutes to design a crown. So instead of sending your intraoral scan, okay, you send the actual crown design that your team members helped you with. And now you're getting restorations back for $30 that are just as good as any other restoration made out of name brand zirconia material. So why is this unique? Well, some other competitors on the market, some leading competitors don't let you export the crown design unless you buy a special dongle with fancy lab software that costs you thousands and thousands of dollars a year. So you might as well not even do it. So Planmeca doesn't charge anything. Once you buy the design software, you're set. Okay, you could send it wherever you want. It's really cool. So this is the first one I did back in 2009. Milling centers were just starting to pop up then. This is a ugly 3Y, those opaque zirconias, the super strong ones. But my contacts were just where I wanted them. Everything was perfect. It dropped right in, and it was $32 shipped. Now they're actually still $32, $32 to $38, depending on what you get. And you could design in whatever you want because it's completely open. Here we're using PlanCAD Premium, which is ExoCAD. You could design in ExoCAD. You could design in PlanCAD Easy, whatever you want to do. It's amazing. And of course, this benefits me because I'm able to get high quality restorations back for like $30. But it also benefits the patients because the turnaround time is like 3 days. And it's enabling me to keep my costs and to be able to take insurances and things like that because I'm not getting charged a giant lab bill. But if you were to ask me what is the best thing for the patient, I have to say it's chairside milling, and we'll talk about that in a minute because it's all about them. It's all about the patient. That's why we get this technology. We don't get the technology for us. It has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with them. We want to provide a service for them to make them more happy, more comfortable, and more at ease when they come. And so digital impressions are a way to do that. No impressions, physical impressions means no gagging. It's terrifying. It's quite frankly completely and utterly traumatic for a patient to get a physical impression. You might not think so because you're numb to it, because you've been doing it for decades and, snap 5 impressions on Mrs. Jones, who cares, right? But the issue is for Mrs. Jones, it's terrifying to have a tray of rubber jammed into your mouth. It elicits a kind of a visceral response, having something, like gooey, and it's just nasty tasting, and, it's not fun. Digital impressions, on the other hand, are completely atraumatic. In fact, patients usually don't even know what's going on when I'm doing it. The next thing they know, their whole mouth is on the screen in full color in 3D, and their jaw just drops, and they're like, what is that? And, you explain to them, hey, I invested in this cool technology so we don't have to do those nasty impressions anymore. And they will love you for it. In fact, if you look at the literature, this has kind of been shown time and time again that the 2 most traumatic things for a crown appointment is the anesthesia and the impression. And we could fundamentally eliminate the impression as we know it by adopting this technology. It's just fantastic. I mean, just take a trip down this rabbit hole with me and look at what social media shows for impressions. You're never going to find a high five and a thumbs up with an impression. It's just all negativity. And this is just not the kind of marketing that you want for your practice. You don't want your patients posting selfies and Snapchats and Instagrams of their impression and, the vomit on the floor and their gagging and things like this on YouTube. It's all negative. That equation just completely flips when you get digital impressions. It turns a negativity into positivity. Now they're telling all their friends, they're referring people to you because they think you're the coolest person in the world because you have 3D scanners and stuff. It's amazing. We're all numb to it as dentists. We're like, yeah, cool, yeah, digital impressions. But for patients, they're blown away. In fact, if you look at the literature, patients unanimously prefer digital impressions over conventional impressions. So it's kind of backed up by science, not just my opinion. So are they as accurate? Because, cool, patients love them, they're awesome, but what if they're not as good? And so we're going to go through that in just a minute. But before we go into the accuracy of digital impressions, I think we just have to take a step back and look at physical impressions. How are we doing as a profession taking physical impressions? And the answer is not super, super good. I mean, if you look at Christensen's landmark study in 97, it said half of all impressions have deficient margins. Margins, guys, those are the very things that are supposed to be captured on an impression. We're terrible at taking physical impressions. This was repeated recently, and it showed 86% of impressions sent to the lab had detectable critical errors. So we're not really that great, guys, taking physical impressions. So digital impressions, I think, are a lot easier to take once you get the hang of it, because let's say you get a little blub or a blip or a little heme on a margin. All you do is just erase that one little spot and scan it 3 seconds and fill in that data. Whereas a physical impression, you got to start all over. So one little thing that you need to know about digital impressions is that basically there's just point clouds of data, dots on the screen that then are mathematically combined to make a triangular mesh, which is then made into a solid model, digital model. Now, you might think the more triangles, the better. That's not necessarily true. You have to understand that, it's really cool to have all these triangles, but what that does is it actually makes the file size ginormous. It could actually decrease accuracy, and it makes model render time take minutes instead of seconds. So it's not necessary to have a high triangle density. In fact, Medina Sotomayor showed that the resolution of the digital impression had no relationship with accuracy. Planmeca has spent a lot of time perfecting their mesh densities to have the perfect combination of speed, mesh density, and render time. I could render a complete arch scan in 15 seconds with the Emerald, whereas many other softwares take minutes, if not hours, and sometimes even days if you have to upload it to the cloud. And once again, this is another study that shows that mesh density does not even relate to margin clarity. In fact, some of the scanners that had the most triangles had the least clear finish lines, okay? So Planmeca has been spending a lot of time perfecting their mathematical algorithms, their scanning algorithms, their stitching pattern algorithms. It's just so cool. I mean, this is me scanning a golf ball with the intraoral scanner. Never would have thought this would be possible in the past. I never would have dreamed that we could scan an object like this with all these repeating dimples and patterns. This is what would notoriously confuse a scanner, and we're able to do it really quick, and that just goes to show how far we've come with these systems. Now, if you talk about digital accuracy, there's a couple of things that you need to understand. One is that according to ISO standard 5725, accuracy is composed of trueness and precision. Precision is the least important thing compared to trueness. Trueness is a lot more important. So precision means how repeatable it is, right? So if you look at the top right bullseye, basically you could see all those bullet holes are clustered together, right? But they're far away from the target. We know that trueness and precision are really important according to ISO standard 5725, where accuracy is composed of these two components. If you look at, the bullseyes, the top right is a very precise, would be a very precise scanner, but not a very true scanner, because the holes are far away from the center target, but they're clustered together. So a high precision scanner is repeatable, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's repeatable in a good way. It could be really precise and yet very bad because it's repeatable far away from reality, far away from the center point. So when we do our research, we focus a lot more on trueness, which means how close to reality is the intraoral scanner scanning that object. So is it true to size? Is it really the same exact size of what you're scanning? And that's kind of what we usually think about when we think about accuracy. And so the way that we do this is we scan something, an object like there in gold with a $300,000 industrial scanner that's certified down to 3 microns accuracy. And then we scan the very same object with our intraoral scanner, and we use sophisticated metrology software to overlay those two data sets using iterative closest point algorithms, and we get like mesh density back with color-coded errors of where that is wrong. So where we were wrong with our intraoral scan. And if you look at the data from the Emerald S, it's a fantastic scanner, guys. It's a new generation scanner for sure. It's able to track soft tissue. In fact, when we compared it against the Trios 4 and the Prime Stand, all performed really well with about 75 to 100 microns accuracy for soft tissue. That's completely edentulous scanning. Compare that to physical impressions, which compresses the tissue about 100 to 120 microns. It's actually better than physical impressions. We also looked at it in this latest study, looking at how does the Emerald S perform on all these different substrates. So dentin, blue core, white core, amalgams, and composites of various different translucencies, and gold, and zirconia and Emax. How does it scan all that stuff? Because that's kind of what we scan in the mouth, all these various different substrates. And what we found, using the same kind of software we have, where we do an industrial scan of that model, and then we compare it against the intraoral scanners, we found if you look at this for a minute, you're going to be blown away how far we've come in digital dentistry. Like, take a look at the Omnicam and the old Emerald there on the left-hand side of the screen. Now jump all the way over to the right-hand side of the screen where you see that there's no statistical difference between the Trios 4, the Emerald S, and the Prime Scan. So all three of those scanners are top performers in this market. This includes complete arch scanning, okay, so cross arch scanning, and then how it performs on enamel and dentin. So no difference there. That's just amazing how far we've come in digital dentistry, and it's really cool to see the Emerald S perform just as well as those scanners, because those scanners cost upwards to twice as much as the Emerald S. And they're really good scanners. Don't get me wrong; I think they're phenomenal. But I really do think that the Emerald S is just a value that really, if you consider the no fees for 5 years, this level of accuracy, this trueness here, and everything else, it's the best value on the market today. Phenomenal that we could get these numbers out of this scanner. Really cool. So moving on now, we're going to talk about, the scanner's cool, it's accurate, it's doesn't have any fees, it's light, but what can you do with it? Because that's what it's all about. I think if you pair this thing with a mill, you're going to be blown away with what you could do. Take this patient, for example. This is an emergency patient, fractured that tooth, comes to me in a panic. Normally before chairside milling, I would prep that and temp that. And sometimes this is not a patient of record of mine. So sometimes they would never come back. They would not pay for their crown, or they would go to their different doc to get the final. With chairside milling, you're one and done. So they come for the emergency, they're getting fixed permanently and sent home. Right? So there's no like temps, there's no worry, if you do a core buildup, they're never going to come back for the crown. And y'all know what happens when they don't come back. The tooth fails if they don't get a final restoration on it. And so this is really cool. Look at how fast this thing is to design. This software from Planmeca is phenomenal. It took a perfect mirror image of tooth number 8, and this is real time. Within a second, I have a replica mirror image of tooth number 8 onto tooth number 9. Look at that. We're pretty much done with the design here, guys. All we have to do is smooth up a few little seams, and we're ready to go. How cool is that? That's what, 1 second literally to design this restoration. Here it is dry fit, so it's not even completely seated. It's just kind of rested on there so I could see the contour. There it is, bonded on and delivered. Look at how awesome we're able to get a shade match just from this monolithic Emax restoration. It's super easy to do. I like that I could have complete control when I mill. So I'm able to control the contour the way I want it, the shape. Everything is important to me. And when it's in my control. So the color, it's all on me. And I love that because it's so easy. It makes me look like a genius to be able to do this when it's really anybody could do it. For example, if you look at these restorations here, it took me 1 second to stain this thing and characterize it for the patient. And all of a sudden to your patient, you become like an artist. So what I tell them is like, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to hand paint this restoration for you to get it blend into your mouth perfectly. I'm going to customize it for you so that nobody knows that you have a fake tooth up here. She like literally blown away by this. And really all it is, guys, is nothing. You paint, like mindlessly paint a little white on there, put a little bit of incisal translucency, and you're done. It takes no time at all. You don't have to be a lab tech. It's so easy, guys. I wish I could show you how easy this is. Take this patient. They had these ugly composites, designed them, painted a little bit of white and a little bit of blue, and all of a sudden everything blends in, right? This patient was so sad that everybody knew her 2 front teeth were fake. Now, nobody knows. They look like the other teeth. One thing that's really cool, I think, is the ability to improvise on the fly. And so these little adhesion bridges have been phenomenal practice builder for me. You wouldn't think so, but these, I think that they're kind of something that only makes sense if you have a chairside mill. So take this patient, for example. She's extremely medically compromised. She's not an implant candidate. In fact, she's had 3 implants that have failed there. And for various different reasons, she's just not an implant candidate. So what we did is she came in for a new patient consult to me. And, these patients bounce around. And she's like, what can you do for me here? So and so wanted to do a 3-unit bridge, blah blah blah. And I'm like, 3 units bridge would be fantastic, but those teeth that you have on either side are perfectly healthy teeth. I wouldn't want to shave those down for no reason. And she does have kind of a difficult occlusion, so I was reluctant on to do an adhesion bridge, but this was 5 years ago, and it's still in place today. 2 wings were the standard for me for years. I would do 2 wings for these little adhesion bridges, But I did some research, and what I found was that these 2 wings have much worse success than 1 wings, and I never would have thought that would have been the case. But if you look, 1 wing has a 92.3% survival rate at 5 years, versus if you do 2 wing adhesion bridge, and this is for all ceramic resin bonded fixed partial dentures, okay, so like lithium disilicate or even zirconia. So 2 wings would be 70%. So it's just a huge difference. 1 wing is the way to go. Ever since I read this study, I've been doing nothing but 1 wing, and then it's further confirmed in the literature that shows that 1 wing adhesion bridges have like a 9.4-year success rate. That's a fantastic life expectancy for a restoration. Here's another study that looked specifically at IPS EMAX, and what they found was that 35 restorations followed for 3 to 5 years had a 100% success rate. It's also perfect for these geriatric patients that have missing mandibular incisors. 1 little wing, there it is, bonded on, and it's just a great restorative option for these patients when the spaces are too small for implants, or you don't feel like a patient's a good implant candidate. Here's another patient, young girl, cleft lip and palate patient. She's been grafted 7 times there. She's given up on grafting, and so here's her adhesion bridge characterized, placed out of occlusion there during excursives, and she could smile again and be happy. Here's another case, just bread and butter stuff. In fact, these patients usually come in for consults, and the whole appointment takes an hour. You just scan them, design this little thing, mill it. It takes about 15 minutes to mill, and then you bond it on. It's just a really cool service for the patient to be able to do these little 1-wing adhesion bridges. 1 wing's nice because it allows that ponic to flex with the tooth. Where if you have 2 wings, the teeth flex at different rates, and you're oftentimes popping one of those wings off. And so this is just a really cool thing to be able to do for a patient, and something that I think Chairside CAD CAM makes perfect sense to be able to do. Here's just another case. I literally have hundreds of these cases that I could show you guys. It could get kind of crazy. Let me talk you through the process. So here we have a missing central, and once again, patient's not an implant candidate. But even if they were, this would be a phenomenal provisional restoration. Put them in Romexis Smile Design. Determined that we have a tooth size discrepancy, so I did a little modification. But this is basically what you get, guys. Okay. Setting it up in Romexis. Do a quick little scan. Okay. And now I'm going to use the software, and I'm going to mirror image the contralateral tooth number 8 onto site number 9. Okay, so I'm marking my ponic margin there of where I want that emergence profile to be coming out of. You could prepare a ovate ponic site if you wish. In this case, I didn't find it necessary. I did a modified ridge lap ponic. And then here we go. Marking my veneer margin for my lingual. Very minimum prep, all in enamel there. And here is my mirror image shell of tooth number 8 that the software gives me. And I'm able to go ahead and design that veneer, that wing. Okay, making sure it's about 1 millimeter to 0.5 millimeter thick. Okay, and then I'm going to design my ponic. And there we go. I'm going to just fine tune that a little bit, but you can see really how fast this software is and how powerful it could be. To be able to design these mirror images is just really fun to be able to do. Once again, patients are watching this and they're just blown away. They don't know anything about tooth anatomy or mirror imaging or anything like that, but they think you're the coolest dentist on the planet, that you're designing their tooth on the computer and you're able to provide them a restoration in a single visit. So cool. The other thing I really like about chairside milling is I don't have to prep for temporaries, so I don't have to worry about temporaries falling off, so I could preserve more tooth structure and be more conservative. This is my standard full coverage crown prep. It's called a crown lay or an occlusal overlay. Some people call them onlays, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it's a D2740. It covers all the cusps of the tooth and a good aspect of the coronal tooth structure. So we used to do these with gold all the time. They were amazing restorations, super conservative, only prepping where you needed to. You didn't mindlessly and arbitrarily go down to the cervical area just because you felt like you needed to. Then the age of porcelain fused to metal occurred where everybody thought they had to hide their margins like 2 millimeters below the tissue, right? But people kind of kept in that same habit. They didn't change from that, even though modern ceramics perfectly blend in. So here's a prep where we left the finish line at the height of contour on the facial. Here it is bonded on. You can't see where that margin is, and you never will be able to. They're just amazing. So let's see the power of the Planmeca system with these types of restorations. So this is just a bread and butter case. We have a large amalgam restoration. The patient's symptomatic. She has cracks. She has recurrent decay in the mesial there. And she also has a symptomatic fracture on the distal lingual cusp where she is in pain with the tooth sleuth there. So she comes to me and she wants to get her crown. So what I do is I do a kind of a more modern conservative crown preparation where I don't put my margins down at the tissue on the buccal and lingual, and I preserve a thick band of enamel buccal and lingually. I have to go down mesio and distally because she had decay and other restorations there. So this is what we're looking at here with the digital impression here. Actually, I don't think there's any retraction here. If there is, it's very minor. Looks like we have like a single double zero cord in place. Super easy to scan these cases. Really fun to be able to do these. This is the Emerald S. This is not sped up at all, guys. This is real time. Really easy to be able to do this. I'm never stressed out when I pick up the scanner. I could tell you I remember I used to get a little bit stressed out when I picked up impression material and was wondering if I was going to capture everything, if there was going to be a rip or a void or a tear or anything like that that could affect the margin quality. With digital, it's kind of laid back because if you do find a little area, you just go back and rescan it 3 seconds later and you're done. Okay, so there's the digital model. Taking the impression of the imposing is usually a team member's job to do, depending on your state laws. But in some states, you can't have a team member take a final impression on a crown, so they could definitely scan the opposing and the bite, though. So here we are. That's real render time. It's roughly about 5 seconds of render time. Guys, you'd be surprised some of these softwares take minutes to render, which really, really puts a, stressful point on things when you're having to wait for things to render for, 5-10 minutes. Here's their artificial intelligence margin marking. You just scribble and then it tries to find the margin. It oftentimes does a pretty decent job. You just have to go back and fine tune a few areas. Okay, super easy to be able to do that. Here's real-time design here. Really, really fast. The tools are ultra powerful. Look at the occlusion. 2 little dots on the functional cusps. Okay, there's an instant color code thickness that you get from the software, so you don't have to guess how thick you are. Proximal contacts, I like them to be Hawaii kind of green. Here it is the day of removing the rubber dam. We have a lot of heme and everything like that. Let's take a look and see how it is a year later. So here it is a year later at a hygiene check. I just snapped a quick photo. There it is at that same hygiene check, bite wing radiograph to determine everything. Look how perfect that thing fits. You're not going to find a better fit. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal mill. Here's another case. Okay, this one was done 7 or 8 years ago. Blends right in. Here it is on the radiograph. Once again, perfect fits. Here it is 7 years later. Okay, great restorations. All that enamel, I could check that at hygiene. I could feel it, make sure it's sealed. I'm not guessing. I'm not mindlessly poking around below the tissue. Here's a study that is taking into consideration all the kind of chairside mills on the market. And what it's showing is marginal gap and measuring that using micro CTs. And it's measuring something called absolute marginal gap. And what it found was that the 30S mill from Planmeca was the best mill on the market, okay, compared to all the chairside mills that were tested in the study. Another thing that's really cool that a lot of people don't know about is smile design softwares. These are really good for treatment planning. So Romexis Planmeca has a fantastic integrated smile design. So here's a patient that just wanted veneers on 8 and 9. I'm like, okay, this is what it would look like if you got veneers on 8 and 9. She's like, I don't like that. She's like, wow, that's not any better than what I have. I'm like, well, yeah, we have to match the color that you have. And like, this is what you would look like if you got the front 4. And she's like, I don't really like that either. I'm like, this is 6. And she's like, okay, we're getting a little bit better now. I'm like, this is 8 with whitening. And she's like, I want that. And so you could see, you could do, various different shades, contours, and she's giving you all this feedback. And then that 2D silhouette goes into 3D software to help you wax that case. And so I'm just going to show you kind of a case really quick that we did a smile with the Planmeca Emerald S and the 30S mill. So here we are scanning this patient in. We've already done the digital wax up and the smile design, and now we're on the day of preparations, and we are doing the real-time scan speed here. This is not sped up at all. This is a really fast scanner, guys, and the color quality is amazing, as you're going to see when I'm marking these margins. Just a really, really accurate scanner, as well, as we discussed before. So I don't have to worry about my marginal fits. If you pair this scanner with the 30S mill, you're going to have probably the two best, most accurate things combined together. It's phenomenal to be able to provide quality restorations like this for my patients in a single visit. So this is a all-day appointment. Usually we're done around 2. So the patient comes in at 8, and we prep, scan, design, mill, and deliver all restorations the same day. Really cool, really good service for the patient. They could be one and done. I don't have to worry about veneer temps, and she's already tried in the wax up, so she likes it, so I don't have to worry about, does she like the smile design or anything like that. So here we are now telling the software to copy that wax up. So here's the wax up that we have made for her, and we tried that into the patient's mouth using a putty wash of the 3D printed wax up, and we scan that in. So now the software here is going to literally copy that wax up to the micron, including all the occlusion and everything like that. The main thing that you have to work out is proximal contact stuff. Okay, software is extremely powerful, guys. So she goes from here to here, same day. That's really cool. Of course, if you want to do more sophisticated stuff, you get PlanCAD Premium. PlanCAD Premium is essentially exocad. So here's a patient of mine who has TMD, and I need to make an occlusal guard. So I took a CBCT scan in centric relation. I also did an intraoral scan in centric relation. I saw how those two matched up using Romexis to merge those models together. Now I'm virtually mounting him on a articulator, going through excursive movements, and then I'm going to open the vertical and do a occlusal guard. So all this stuff is possible with Planmeca. Here's another patient. We did a 3D face scan. We did an ultra low dose jaw scan. We merged the intraoral scans with the jaw scans from the Emerald and the ProMax CBCT. We're virtually mounting him on the articulator, and we're going to go through lateral and excursive movements to restore anterior guidance to this patient. Here's another patient, different patient, same situation. We are rebuilding the anterior restorations and trying to eliminate the second molar non-working side interference. As you could see, the software highlights it there, and so I'm building up cuspid rise and looking to see if I could eliminate that protrusive interference. Here's another patient. We're just doing a smile design, and this is showing you Romexis smile design. Really cool smile design software. We're able to quickly do wax ups on patients that are missing teeth or that just want their smile redone, and we're able to inexpensively show them what their smile might look like if we were to do some restorations, implants or bridges or whatever, veneers, and you could just quickly at a glance show really cool stuff. And patients are usually sitting in the chair and everything's live, and so they're able to give you feedback. Like this patient wanted a more rounded central incisors, wanted them a little shorter, so I'm making tweaks. And now what's cool is I could bring that into the waxing software from Planmeca, and I could wax that case in 3D. Okay, so now I'm adding putting a 3D element to that two-dimensional smile design, which is super cool. And I am now going to put my silhouette over to see how close we are. And also, by the way, Planmeca does fantastic face scanning, and you could integrate face scans into the software as well. So you have the whole shebang there. It's really cool. And, of course, they have 3D ortho software as well. Planmeca has everything. I just don't think anybody knows about it. They make the best software on the planet. So, the first step to any good ortho case is a good intraoral scan. So here we are taking a complete arch digital impression, and we're going to fire this into the 3D ortho software. What you have to understand is that this ortho software allows you to also integrate CBCT data. So here we are in the ortho software segmenting out the teeth for individual tooth movements, and the software automatically picks those margins, and all you have to do is tweak them. So now here we are moving the teeth, but what's cool is from Planmeca Romexis came the roots and the ultra low dose CBCT of the skull. So as I'm moving the teeth, I could see where the roots are in the bone. Okay, how cool is that? I think it's really, really cool to be able to see the long axis of the tooth. Same thing on the lower. Once again, automatic segmentation of the teeth. I'm able to bring the DICOM data set down there. I could add as many attachments to the teeth as I want. I could segment out phases of treatment, so where you're only moving certain teeth at a time. It's truly really powerful. And I think, for me, this software is fun, and you get team members involved. It's something that I think a lot of docs want to get into, but they're scared to, and they don't know how to do it. So it's definitely worth looking into this 3D ortho software, especially when you have all the information of the bone and where the teeth are going, the roots, and everything like that. Of course, this is the indirect bonding trays. This is the model bases for the suck downs that we're going to do for that case. Implant impressions, easy to do digitally, guys. We also do giant interim prosthetics. So this is a patient that has to get grafted again for like the 7th time. And that's how much bone defect they have. So they're going to be in a provisional for quite a while, guys. And we definitely don't want a partial denture up there to pound the graft material, right? That's probably why it failed 7 times before. So we go ahead and we design this bridge and we mill it out of TelioCAD. TelioCAD in Romexis. So this is TelioCAD bridge material. We're going to go ahead and mill this thing out. There it is milled. And we're going to disc the embrasures, add a little stain and glaze to it using resin stain kit. Okay, so there's the raw, contoured, and the stained. And here it is in her mouth after grafting. Probably a little bit too much blue, but no worries. Here's another case where we have this patient who needs extractions, grafts, and a provisional. So once again, we have this pre-made so that she comes in day of surgery and she's able to get that and go home with that. I really do think that this system is one of the best on the market for restoring implants. And I'm not meaning tie bases. I think tie bases are in a way complete garbage, especially these skinny little tie bases that a lot of manufacturers have. I like custom abutments. I'm a huge believer in custom abutments because they hold the tissue better than tie bases. And they increase greater soft tissue stability in general compared to stock abutments and tie bases. So you could import core files into the software. A core file is wherever you send your digital impression to get a custom abutment made, the core file is that abutment merged to the digital impression. And so you could design your own crown on that, okay, and mill it yourself. Another way is to go ahead and just have the company send you a crown design and mill that. We'll show you that in a minute. So I'm going to show you a cool case. Here's a patient who is missing tooth number 8. We did some really cool stuff on her. This is the last case I'm going to show you guys, and then we're gonna stop because I could keep going forever. I love this stuff. So basically, this patient is missing a central incisor, and we take a complete arch digital impression. Okay, so that's the first step for anything digitally is you take a digital impression. Okay, typically a complete arch impression. Because they're so easy to do, there's no worries here about accuracy or anything like that. We're going to merge this with CBCT. And so we need a nice complete arch impression. The more teeth, the better, because the more teeth you have to merge to the DICOM data set, the better and the more accurate that merge will be. But before we merge, we're going to go ahead and wax this tooth. Okay, so here's tooth number 9, and we're going to mirror image that into tooth number 8. And we're going to get a perfect wax up into that site. So I know exactly where to virtually place that implant for this surgery case. Okay. So here's the implant wax up. Almost done with the wax up. How fast that wax up is. This software is just so cool, guys. Now we're going to take into consideration proximal contact strength for this wax up. Okay, so I want it to be kind of this oasis green look. Okay, and then I'm going to check occlusion. I want this out of occlusion. So I'm going to make sure that we're not hitting that in occlusion. So we're out of occlusion a little bit there. And now we're ready to go ahead and merge that with our CBCT. I'm going to go ahead and accentuate the CEJ just a little bit there so that when I merge it, I could have a kind of where I want that tissue to drape down to. If you under contour that, the tissue will drop down. So now I'm merging my intraoral scan to the ultra low dose DICOM data set here by just clicking 3 points. Perfect merge. A best fit algorithm occurs where the software is going to fine tune that merge. Okay, and there we go. And I could check that. I could also bring in my wax up. So my wax up that I just did is going to fly right in. Okay, so here we are. We're perfect. Now I can start planning that implant. And so we could see I'm also going to segment out the contralateral root really quick. Romexis has some kind of artificial intelligence root segmentation. It's really powerful. It's really cool. So I'm segmenting out the contralateral tooth and root of tooth number 9 here. Kind of an extra step that you don't have to do, but it's one that I do, and you'll see why in a little bit, why I do this. Basically, I'm going to use that root to help determine the emergence profile of my provisional restoration on tooth number 8. Okay, because there's nothing better than the patient's natural anatomy. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to virtually, so you can see the root there, I'm going to virtually plan the implant on site number 8. Okay, and so in this case, I'm going to use either a Straumann, I haven't decided, either a Straumann or Astra, just depending on my mood. So here we go. We're planning for a Straumann here, but it's so easy to change if you want. You just right click and change implants, and it keeps it right at the same location. So here you can see beautiful. By the way, guys, it also integrates perfectly with Camlog and Conelog brand. It does BioHorizons, all seamless, where you don't have to basically think because the sleeve height's already predetermined. It's all perfectly integrated with the surgical guide kit. In fact, there's over 100 different implant that it integrates with, so it's really cool. You name brand implant, so you're not using like whatever Fisher Price implant. And here we could see the sleeve. You could rotate the sleeve. You could change the height of the sleeve based off of the surgical guide kit. This particular kit has 3 different levels. So you could adjust everything beautifully. So cool. So now what's really cool is we could go on and fabricate a surgical guide from this. And so I'm going to show you, there's also the ability to make custom sleeve tubes and anything like that. You could basically do anything you want. So for any implant, you could get it to work with this software. So here's the surgical guide module. You just basically circle where you want the guide, okay? And the software is then going to make a guide. You don't have to mess with any parameters if you don't want to. It's all preset. The only time you could pick your 3D printer, but I found that it doesn't really matter. You could print with any printer and it works fine. And what's really cool is if you wanted to further customize things like thickness of the guide, how tight it fits to the teeth, you could do all that in these settings. But to be honest with you guys, I don't really ever mess with it. I just kind of hit next. So here's what the guide looks like first rendered. And then what you do is you just use this giant eraser tool to trim it up. You could add text to it. You can put little holes in it to see, make sure it's positively seated. And you can basically export that, and you could mill it or 3D print it. Okay, I recommend 3D printing guides. I think milling guides is kind of archaic. It's really much more easy to print a guide these days than it is to mill a guide. Because you could print a guide for about $3, okay, out of surgical grade resin. Really cool. All right, so there you go, adding the text there. And now what's cool is you could go back and verify everything if you want to measure your, total drill length and verify that everything's okay if you're uncomfortable. export all that as a PDF. That PDF then gets saved, and you could put that on the day of surgery. You could put it on your kind of operatory wall so that you know, especially in multiple implant cases, it's helpful to know like what you got. Now, you could also replicate your manufacturer's temporary abutment. So you could look up whatever diameter and extension length of your manufacturer's temp abutment is, and you could recreate that digitally using the Romexis abutment editor, and it'll attach it to the implant, and all that's exportable. So here I am replicating the titanium temp cylinder that is that we will use on the day of surgery. I think we did switch this to a different implant brand. And it's really powerful. You could basically make angled implants. You could make you could do whatever you really want with that. And so now all this is getting exported as STL files. And you could send that to your laboratory and they can make you a pre-surgical temporary. Or you could do it yourself. So I'm going to show you that real quick. So here's what it looks like all exported out. I have the crown. I have the implant. I have the extension cylinder. Okay, I have the root of the contralateral tooth, and I have my wax up. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to modify that that wax up, and I'm going to basically sculpt some material back around that implant temp cylinder. Okay, smooth up the intaglio surface of that wax up a little bit. This is just a step on how I make my temporaries pre-surgically. So I haven't placed the implant yet. Laboratories could do this for you guys. I'm making a mirror image of that root there. Okay, so that's a mirror image of the contralateral tooth, and I'm dragging it over my wax up, which is also a mirror image, kind of aligning them. Okay, so now I'm able to basically replicate what this tooth probably looked like before it got extracted. Okay, so I have a perfect mirror image of the contralateral tooth, and I'm going to just simply combine those two meshes together, and this is going to help me generate the emergence profile of my provisional restoration. So here we go, and now it's really quite simple to make these guys. It's been a game changer for me because I have a temporary ready to go on the day of surgery based off of my implant surgical guide plan. Okay, so now I have that root, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it right at the margin of my temporary implant abutment. So you can see that margin right there. So I'm going to slice it right there. Super cool. Okay, smooth that up. Look at that. Phenomenal. And I could 3D print this or mill it. Okay. So I'll have it in my hand, ready to go on the temp cylinder on the day of surgery. Perfectly fits, perfectly to length, and I don't have to mess with anything else. And of course, you could translate this to multiple unit cases. This is how we do our temporaries. And I just cut a hole. So here we are now. We're going to mill this out actually out of a resin material so that we could reline it and pick it up on the temp cylinder. So here's the 30S mill, churning this thing out butter smooth. You gotta love this mill. It's a workhorse mill. We've had it for over a year, and we've milled thousands of restorations with this thing, and it has not failed us. There it is on the temp cylinder. So here we are on the day of surgery, snapping our surgical guide, place our implant, and then snap this sucker right in. Okay? So cool. So, I mean, guys, it's like the coolest thing ever. So now, obviously, we're ready to go for final restoration, and there's the temporary after healing for quite a while. Okay? And I got to show you guys this one last thing. So we're also adding custom irrigation channels to our surgical guides. We're adding internal irrigation. Basically, what you do is you hook up the saline or the sterile water solution, whatever you're using, to the bag line to that. And so when you hit the rheostat to do the osteotomy, instead of flowing through the handpiece, it flows through the surgical guide, and it's custom guided cooling the osteotomy site and also flushing out everything. So here we have a case, and you could do it flap or flapless. We had a flap here because we are probably going to need to graft the facial concavity there. And so you could see the irrigation solution custom cooling that site. It's cooling the osteotomy. So every time you drill, it's making sure our solution is flowing. So that frees up your assistant from having to hand inject around that. It also makes even more sense for flapless cases where you have not a lot of space to work. So this is just some cool stuff that we're doing with irrigated surgical guides and things like that, custom channels and ports, and really, really fun stuff. Wish I could keep going. I have days worth of content, and it gets more complicated as we go, including, pre-surgical hybrid prosthetics, 3D printed hybrids, and all this stuff. But unfortunately, they only give me like, I don't know, an hour, and I just want to keep going, but I can't. But thank you for your time already.
Thank you, Dr. Renne, for being with us, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Everyone who attended will receive today's recording in the coming week via email. On behalf of Henry Schein and Plan Mecca, thank you, Dr. Renne, for your presentation. Have a great day.